Ava Rourke lived in a weathered cedar cabin tucked just off a gravel road, about 4 miles from the lake, and even farther from anyone's business. The roof creaked in the wind, and the porch sagged a little on the left. But she liked it that way. Mornings started early. Always the same. By 5 o'clock, she was already halfway down the trail behind the property, running steady beneath the lodgepoles. Locals sometimes saw her in town, grabbing coffee or stopping by the hardware store. Folks said she was polite, maybe a little quiet, kept her head down, minded her own. Most assumed she'd done some time in the military. The way she moved, the way she stood, it was something you noticed without knowing why. But no one asked. That kind of silence had weight to it, and the neighbors knew better than to poke. Her cabin sat facing a wide stretch of pines that rolled all the way to the base of the ridge. In the evenings, she'd sit outside on a folding camp chair, boots unlaced, coffee cooling in one hand. Sometimes she watched the tree line for an hour without saying a word, just breathing, like the quiet was something she needed. Every now and then, a kid selling magazines or looking for lost dogs would come up the drive. They'd see her coiling rope with methodical ease or scrubbing a camp stove with the edge of her thumbnail. Once, someone spotted her cleaning a bolt-action rifle on the porch. Smooth and slow, like she was oiling something that wasn't just a tool, but a memory. No one knew about the combat deployments, or the sniper school, or the years she spent on ridgelines like this one, waiting for wind and breath to line up just right. That part of her life stayed tucked away in boxes beneath the bed. Out here, she was just Ava. No rank, no record, no medals. But if you paid close attention, if you caught the way she scanned the horizon before walking to her truck, or the way she folded a tarp into perfect quarters without looking, you might realize she hadn't forgotten a thing. She'd just stopped talking about it. Ava enlisted in the Marine Corps 2 weeks after her 19th birthday. She walked into the recruiter's office in downtown Billings wearing a flannel shirt, jeans, and boots that still had dust from the ranch. 5'3", 115 pounds on a good day. She didn't look like much. Not to them. The recruiter asked twice if she was sure. Ava said yes, both times. Boot camp was hell. But she expected that. What she didn't expect was how quickly the jokes would start. One of the other recruits called her Boot Camp Barbie the first week. It stuck. She didn't argue, just ran harder, shot cleaner, listened more. She qualified expert on the rifle range, with the M16 A4, perfect grouping. The instructors double-checked her scores, thought there was a mistake. There wasn't. Ava just didn't miss. By the time she reached the fleet, her name was already being passed around for advanced training. She got a slot in the Scout Sniper Prep course. Then the full pipeline. That was when it got harder. Some of the guys acted like she didn't belong there. Others didn't say anything but made it clear they didn't plan to help. The instructors didn't go easy on anyone. But with her, they pushed further. Longer stalks, tighter shooting drills, more hours in the mud. She never gave them the satisfaction of falling behind, graduated in the top 10% of her class, earned her hog's tooth. She mastered the math, wind drift, Coriolis, elevation, humidity. Fieldcraft came just as naturally. She could vanish in a patch of brush and stay still for hours, waiting for the perfect moment. Her instructors started calling her Ghost, not in front of the others, just when she passed her evaluations. But none of that seemed to matter when it came time to deploy. Team leads would glance her way and then shuffle assignments. One time, the excuse was weight limits on the helicopter. Another, they claimed she looked too young and might spook the local security teams. She wasn't even allowed to argue, just nodded, checked hair gear, and stood by while others took the ride. Ava never shouted, never called them out. She learned early that silence cut deeper. Her weapon did the talking. Every confirmed shot, every time her calculations saved lives, in a world full of noise, She proved herself in the quiet. The mission was called Willow Extract. Joint contract through the State Department. Approved 2 weeks prior. 14 American engineers stranded on the southern edge of Mindoro after a local infrastructure deal collapsed. When security guarantees fell through, the region turned fast. Armed factions started pushing in. Not full-scale conflict. Not yet. But enough to make evacuation urgent. The plan was simple on paper. 2 Army Blackhawks would insert a retrieval team 6 clicks out, push to the engineer's last known location, and move them back to the landing zone for extraction. Ava was listed as Overwatch. Her job was to provide long-range security from elevated ground near the LZ. She'd done similar assignments before. Never complicated. Never personal. This one felt different the moment she walked into the briefing tent. The team lead, Captain Greaves, barely looked up from the tablet in his hand. He scanned her name, then her face, and said she'd be staying at the primary site with comms and a reserve tech. Said it like it had already been decided. The tone wasn't hostile, just dismissive. He didn't question her qualification out loud. He didn't have to. The implication was there in the way he scanned past her on the op roster. She wasn't part of the assault element. Her presence wasn't needed up front. The reasoning was thin. He mentioned logistics. Said too many people on the ground would bog down movement. She recognized the words. She'd heard them before. They were a polite way of saying she didn't look the part, didn't match what people pictured when they thought of combat assets. She didn't argue. Ava never did. Not in moments like that. She checked her M40A6, ran her dope card for the projected elevation and humidity, and confirmed her pack had what she needed. Extra mags, spotting scope, rangefinder, 2 liters of water, enough to stay in place if things turned sideways, which they sometimes did. The helicopters lifted just before dawn. The light was still gray when they dropped the team near the ridgeline. Ava stayed behind with the comms operator and a young rifleman who looked fresh out of training. He spent most of the walk checking his optic and adjusting his plate carrier. She kept her eyes forward, scanning the jungle like it was already watching her back. She didn't say much, just listened. It was too early to know, but something about this one felt off. Quiet in a way that didn't sit right. She'd learned to trust that feeling. The first call came in shaky. Just after the sun cleared the canopy, Greaves on the radio. Clipped and urgent. Contact. Multiple. Movement on the north side of the compound. Ava heard the thump of grenades in the distance. Short bursts of automatic fire, followed by screaming that didn't belong on a clean exfil. The LZ was quiet. Too quiet. That was never good. The comms operator, barely 20, kept looking over at her, asking if they should move, asking if they should call for air. His voice cracked more than once. The young rifleman who'd been assigned to hold position with them was crouched behind a tree, scanning every shadow like it might explode. His breathing was loud enough to give away their position if anyone had been close. Ava stayed still. She remembered her first deployment, Kandahar. First winter. She had a clean shot on a technical with a mounted PKM but waited. Her orders had been to hold. She held. 2 Marines died when that gun opened up. She carried that decision every day since. It was the reason she never hesitated when it counted. She reached for her rifle, slid the bolt open, checked the chamber, then closed it quiet. The comms operator was still talking when she stood up and started tightening her pack straps. She didn't explain. She didn't ask for permission. There was no one left to give it. The jungle closed in fast. Thick humidity wrapped her like a wet sheet. Vines caught at her ankles. Branches clawed at her sleeves. She moved low, slow, then fast when the terrain opened up. Every 50 meters, she stopped, listened, let her pulse settle. The sounds ahead were getting sharper now. Rifle cracks, shouted orders, panic layered under command. It was close. Her shirt stuck to her spine. Sweat dripped from her jaw, but she kept moving, always forward. No backup, no orders, just her, That was enough. Always had been. It took her almost 40 minutes to reach the ridge. The climb was steep, the ground soft underfoot, and the air so thick it felt like trying to breathe through a wet towel. Her legs burned. But she kept moving, using roots for grip, stopping only when she absolutely had to. When she broke through the last line of brush, she dropped flat and crawled the final stretch on her belly. Slow and silent. From the ridgeline, the compound came into view, crumbling walls, patchy roof, smoke rising. The team was pinned inside. She counted at least 18 hostiles spread across the perimeter, dug into broken structures and behind brush piles. They were working smart, using cover, setting angles. A PKM machine gun on the north side was holding the team down. An RPG gunner was flanking left, half hidden behind a water tank. Ava slid behind a fallen log. Smooth bark, solid base, just enough elevation. She stabilized the M40A6 across her pack, checked her scope, and ran the numbers in her head. Distance, 540 meters. Wind, steady at about 9 knots out of the southeast. Light fading. She made her adjustments, breathed out slow, and settled in. The PKM gunner dropped before he knew he was being watched. A quick shift. Slight recoil. Then the assistant went down too. She moved left. Low. Crawling 10 meters to a second position. The RPG gunner never saw her. Her shot took him just above the collarbone. He folded back. Weapon clattering to the dirt. The radio hissed. Confused chatter. Voices trying to figure out what was happening. Who was firing? Where the shots were coming from. Ava said nothing. She was already scanning for the next target. Her heartbeat barely moved. Her body quiet. Controlled. The rifle was steady. She wasn't there to talk. She was there to finish it. Ava stayed locked behind the fallen log, breathing slow and steady. Each shot was deliberate. She wasn't trying to clear the field. That wasn't the mission. Her job now was to buy time. Enough for the men below to regroup. Enough for the medics to do their work. She spotted 2 contractors in the drainage ditch just south of the compound. They moved with purpose. One clamped a tourniquet just above a shredded thigh. The other checked airways, tilted chins, looked for signs of breath. Ava tracked insurgents who drifted too close to their position. A single round to the chest dropped the first. The second fell before he got within shouting distance. The flanking attempt came 20 minutes in. 3 fighters circling through the eastern tree line. Rifle low. Crouched under the brush. Ava shifted position without sound, crawled 10 meters along the ridge, found an opening between 2 trees, and waited. Wind stayed consistent. She let them come into range, let them believe they had an angle, then took them out one by one. First round cracked through a shoulder. The second caught the point man's center mass. The third tried to run. She didn't let him. She moved again, repositioned to higher ground, and rechecked her range. 580 meters this time. She could still see the compound clearly. The chaos had slowed, the gunfire less frequent, but the work wasn't over. One fighter ducked behind a tin shed, popping rounds through a hole in the wall. Ava timed her shot and sent a round through the same gap. The noise stopped. Her rifle didn't shake. Her fingers moved by memory. She knew the M40A6 like it was part of her. The 175-grain M118 LR rounds held their energy across distance, enough to punch through wood. Light metal. Even concrete seams if she placed the shot right. She always placed it right. When the dust began to lift, the team emerged from cover. 3 stretchers moved fast across the clearing. 4 others limped, arms slung over shoulders. The medics did what they could. Ava gave them the time to do it. The Blackhawks dropped in hard and low, kicking up leaves and grit. Within seconds, they were loading out. No one fired back. She stayed on the ridge until they were airborne. Rifle steady, breathing calm, Mission done. 3 days later, the Manila Operations Center smelled like coffee that had been reheated too many times and air conditioning fighting heat it couldn't beat. Ava sat across the table from Captain Greaves. The room was small, windowless, all concrete and glass, with a long whiteboard no one had touched. A legal advisor flipped through the after-action report, page by page. The project manager skimmed his copy, tapping his pen each time he hit a casualty number. 0 friendlies lost, 14 civilians recovered, 23 insurgents neutralized, most of them from long-range precision fire. The source of that fire, according to the report, came from an elevated position west of the compound. The room quieted. The manager leaned back, glanced at Greaves, and asked who had the rifle. Greaves didn't look up right away. His hands were clasped on the table. He stared at his fingers like they were holding something fragile. Then he said it, Rourke. Staff Sergeant Ava Rourke. Nothing more. No speech. No correction. Just the truth. That was all it took. Within a week, the contractor adjusted their protocols. Ava was reassigned as lead overwatch for high-risk extractions. Her clearance was upgraded, so was her pay. She didn't ask for it. Didn't need to. She'd done the work. They just finally saw it. That night, she sat at the hotel bar, nursing a bottle of mineral water. Across the room, one of the contractors who had barely spoken to her on the flight in pulled up a stool. Taylor. Tall. Loud. Always cracking jokes. He didn't say much now. Just sat there. Eyes on the counter. After a while, he told her about a shot he'd missed in Fallujah. How it had stayed with him. How, on that ridge, he'd listened to her rounds cutting through the jungle and wished he'd had half the focus she carried in her silence. He didn't offer an apology. She didn't ask for one. They just sat there, breathing in the quiet. Sometimes, that was enough. The light fades slow behind the ridge. Ava sits on the back porch. Boots kicked off. Elbows resting on her knees. The air smells like pine needles and the kind of rain that never quite falls, just hangs there in the trees. Her coffee's gone cold beside her. But she doesn't reach for it. Doesn't need to. She watches the tree line the same way she always has. Patient. Quiet. Not expecting anything. Just noticing. No one here knows what she did. She never told them. Doesn't mention Mindoro. Doesn't talk about the ridge or the sound a PKM makes when it stops firing all at once. She doesn't talk about the men she helped bring home or the ones she never saw again. It's not because she's hiding. It's just that some things don't need to be spoken out loud to be real. Some nights, though, when the air is heavy like this and the crickets pause just long enough to notice the stillness, she remembers, not in flashbacks, not in nightmares, just a feeling. The weight of a sling on her shoulder, the pressure of her cheek against the stock, the way a deep breath felt right before the shot. Stillness saved lives. Not noise. Not fury. Just calm. That was always her edge. While others yelled or pushed or rushed in too soon, she waited. She listened, and when it counted, she moved once. Just right. And made it matter. There are no medals in her cabin. No plaque. No pictures. Just a folded map. A clean rifle. And a woman who did her job the way it should be done. Some say being underestimated is a weakness. She learned it's the best cover in the world.